your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. Thanks so much for joining us for a look at what made headlines this week. A prominent figure of the 2022 Freedom Convoy in Ottawa has been found guilty on 5 counts. A judge says Pat King is guilty of mischief, counseling others to commit mischief, counseling others to obstruct police, and 2 counts of disobeying a court order. He was found not guilty, however, of intimidation and obstructing police himself. King was involved in the 3-week demonstration against COVID-19 public health restrictions that gridlocked some streets in the nation's capital. The Trudeau government announced it will be temporarily lifting the federal sales tax off of several items in time for the Christmas season. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced the affordability measures on Thursday morning, saying the GST break would apply to toys, diapers, and even restaurant meals beginning in mid-December and last around 2 months.
We're going to remove the GST, HST from groceries, 100% of groceries, all groceries. We're going to remove the GST from restaurant meals, takeouts, fast food. Removing the GST from beer and wine. Removing the GST for essentials like kids' clothing, footwear, diapers, and toys. All tax-free. Removing the GST and HST. For 2 months, Canadians are going to get a real break on everything they do.
Trudeau adds that his government will also send $250 checks to more than 18 million Canadians this spring to help ease affordability pressures. To get the measure passed through Parliament, the Liberals will need the support of an opposition party, and the NDP appears poised to do just that. Federal officials say the cut will save taxpayers around $1.6 billion over the next couple of months, but plan to end the GST holiday on February the 15th. But should this GST and HST break be permanent? According to Franco Terrazzano, the federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, it should be. Terrazzano says Canadians are going to be outraged once they again begin paying taxes on food, diapers, clothing, and shoes when the break ends in mid-February.
So this tax relief is going to help now, like fair enough, right? During a very financially stressful period. But in what world do politicians think Canadians will be able to afford to pay more on necessities on February 16th and afterwards, right? That's why that this tax cut, which will provide some relief, must be permanent and must go further. Again, this government has been hiking so many taxes, which makes life more expensive, that not only does this tax cut need to be permanent, but it has to go much further.
Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, meanwhile, is reminding Canadians the federal carbon tax is set to quadruple, which will be an even bigger financial hit for Canadians.
Trudeau and the NDP have voted for and legislated the quadrupling of the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre, which will stop our trucks from delivering parts to factories, clothing to stores, food to grocery shelves. It will mean billions more will pour across the border into the United States. Millions of jobs will be lost, and a big smile will appear on Donald Trump's face as he picks up the phone from the Oval Office to call Canadian factories, trucking companies, mines, to tell them to go south 100 kilometers where there is no carbon tax and other taxes are dropping.
The latest polls show the federal Conservatives with a 20-point lead over the Trudeau Liberals. Can they maintain that lead, though, heading into the next election? Lethbridge MP Rachel Thomas offers her thoughts on the subject.
Obviously, Pierre Poilievre has been working very, very hard as the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. He's out every single day meeting with regular folks and making sure that he's hearing their stories and understanding their experiences. He's someone who has great stamina and a great passion for this country and its people. And so you asked the question, can that be maintained? Absolutely it can, because it comes from the very core of his being. He loves the nation of Canada and he's passionate about making sure that the people are served well. He's also incredibly hardworking, and he has smart policy. And so coming forward with good options for Canadians, I think, is really what's going to help him as we continue to prepare for the next election, and of course, earn the trust of Canadians.
Why do you think a lot of Conservative policies have really been resonating in Liberal strongholds, traditional strongholds like Toronto? I mean, especially winning that Toronto by-election. Why do you think that's happening more in central Canada now?
Yeah, for sure. Again, I think it has to do with the fact that, Pierre Poilievre, as the leader of the Conservatives, is putting his feet on the ground and really listening to folks. He's having conversations with regular individuals, whether it's at gas stations or grocery stores or workplaces. He's engaging with people where they're at and taking the time to understand what they're concerned about. And so, as Conservatives, I believe that we've prioritized those things that matter most to Canadians. We're committed to axing the tax. We're committed to building homes, which we know is much needed. We're committed to fixing the budget, which we know is totally out of control and causing inflation like never before. And we're committed to stopping the crime, which we know is running rampant, and it's causing people to feel unsafe because, quite frankly, they are unsafe because there's crime that is just skyrocketing, and so that needs to be taken care of. And so I think these are the issues that matter most to Canadians, and they're the issues that we're responding to as Conservatives.
Yeah, let's talk about gun crime, and we've seen a huge increase across the country, especially in major centres like Toronto and Vancouver over the last few years. What approach would your party take differently compared to the Liberals in addressing so many of the violent crimes here in Canada?
Yeah, we know that violent gun crime is up by 116%. So it's skyrocketed. We know that this is having an impact on the safety and well-being of communities, and it's not it's not just some communities. It really is all communities across the country are affected by this, at least in some way. Mr. Trudeau came out just a couple of weeks ago bragging about his handgun ban and the legislation that he's put in place with regards to firearms. At the end of the day, we know that legislation actually only went against those who legally own their firearm and use their firearm responsibly. It didn't go after criminals. And the reason we know that is because actually multiple police associations came out and actually attacked Trudeau on his claim. They actually wanted to clear the record. They wanted to set it straight. So for example, in Toronto, the police association came out and actually said, sir, Mr. Trudeau, the rates of gun crime are actually skyrocketing in comparison to what they were before the Liberals' legislation. So we're seeing where there's a disconnect. I think Trudeau is more interested in appearing like he's creating safety for Canadians than actually creating safety for Canadians. In fact, his legislation, it only worked to divide Canadians. It only worked to attack or scapegoat those individuals who use their firearms for hunting or sports shooting, or for Indigenous folks who also have rifles and often use them for hunting, et cetera, as well. That's not an effective law. At the end of the day, Canadians are not safer because of Trudeau. They're actually put into greater harm.
Now, you've been quite critical of the Trudeau government in the past, saying that censorship has increased exponentially with bills such as C-18 and I believe C-11. Can you explain how these bills are, quote, suffocating the Canadian public?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Look, free speech is an issue that I am extremely passionate about, because if you do not have free speech, the foundations of democracy are under attack. It is that fundamental. And so Bill C-18 actually attacks the freedom of Canadians in terms of their ability to access the news that they would wish to access. So essentially what Trudeau did is under the Liberals, they put law in place that basically favors the big broadcasters and puts other media companies at risk of even existing. It also prevents Canadians from being able to access news on places like Facebook or Instagram, et cetera, which of course Canadians depend on those spaces for the exchange of news. C-18 is something that definitely favors the large corporate news entities in exchange for going after the small ones and essentially putting them in the ground. Or a nail in the coffin, some might say. And so I have huge concerns there with regards to freedom of choice and of course, the opportunity that Canadians have to be able to access different sources. With regards to Bill C-11, ultimately what this does is it breaks your search bar. You think that you're going online and looking for one thing, but actually the government is rerouting you to what they want you to see. So ultimately, it puts the government in the driver's seat in terms of what you can see or say or hear online, which is very scary.
Now, your leader, Pierre Poilievre, says he wants to defund the CBC, Rachel. Now, do you back him on this, or is it just for English TV programming?
Well, look, so when it comes to the CBC, they receive $1.4 billion from Canadian taxpayers. And we know that despite receiving that lofty amount of money, we know that viewership is down. We know that trust is down. We know that ad revenue is down. And we know that despite this abysmal performance, that Catherine Tate, the CEO of the CBC, determined that the executives should get $18 million worth of bonuses. This is crazy. This is crazy. Of course, Canadians are upset by this. So to answer your question directly, Pierre Poilievre has been very clear. We intend to defund the CBC. We also intend, however, to keep Radio Canada because we understand its importance in certain places within Canada where it's more difficult to access news. And so we want to make sure that in those remote areas and in Quebec that access is granted. But make no mistake, in terms of the CBC, it will be defunded.
Randy Boissonnault left his post as employment minister in the Justin Trudeau cabinet. It comes weeks after questions surfaced about the Edmonton MP's past claims of Indigenous identity. He has referred to himself as a non-status adopted Cree from Alberta, with his great-grandmother being a full-blooded Cree woman. He recently walked back those comments, though, and said his family members belong to the Métis Nation of Alberta. This followed a report by the National Post claiming a company he co-owned and applied for government contracts was allegedly Indigenous-owned. Sun political columnist Brian Lilly says the Boissonnault resignation is a bit of a shock.
I was a bit surprised because this guy has faced allegations of doing business through his company with the government while he was sitting at the cabinet table. Didn't get removed from that. He's faced allegations that his business partner, was involved with someone who's been in a couple of major cocaine busts, not convicted, but involved. They even shared a P.O. box with this woman for their business. He has been accused of shady deal after shady deal and nothing until the story broke that he claimed Indigenous ancestry, and that's not true at all. And it's not just that his company claimed to have Indigenous ownership to try and get business from the government in one of these programs that's a set-aside to help Indigenous businesses. It's that he had declared himself Indigenous multiple times. The Liberal Party had described him that way. That's what finally got Trudeau to act on this. None of the other ethical breaches mattered, just that one. So I guess we now know what will get you kicked out. Being an actual Indigenous person, as Jody Wilson-Raybould said, and trying to tell the truth, that'll get you fired. It took being a fake Indigenous person for Randy Boissonnault to be fired, not all the ethical lapses.
Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer says the time has come for the Trudeau government to hand over documents to the RCMP in relation to the Liberals' Green Slush Fund. He says until they do, not much will be accomplished in Parliament as things have grounded to a halt. Scheer says this is a patterned behavior, with this government redacting and withholding vital information from Canadians.
And let's remember what this scandal is all about. Liberal-friendly board members, people appointed to the board by Justin Trudeau, funneled tax dollars into their own companies. The Auditor General found $400 million worth of grants misappropriated in this way. Also found over 180 conflicts of interest. And the government has fought transparency on this all along the way. They refused to listen to warnings from whistleblowers. They fought Conservatives' efforts to uncover details about this scandal. And it was only after Conservatives called in the Auditor General that the sordid details of this affair were made known to Canadians. This is also a pattern from this Liberal government. Remember, they've done this before. They've kept documents hidden and redacted key pieces of information with other scandals, like the WE organizations.
Representatives from 2 public health care lobbying groups are calling on the federal government to do more to protect Medicare from privatization. Melanie Bichard with Canadian Doctors for Medicare says she's worried that although we have universal health care, some of her patients are having to pay for access, which she says is wrong.
Meanwhile, the federal government has proposed a viable solution, but we've been waiting over a year and a half for them to implement it. My colleagues and I were thrilled when, way back in March of 2023, the health minister at the time, Jean-Yves Duclos, announced that he would issue an interpretation letter to clarify the Canada Health Act. Specifically, he stated that the letter would stipulate public funding for nurse practitioner-delivered care and virtual care. The Canada Health Act was first issued back in 1984 when virtual care and nurse practitioners did not have as prominent a role in the healthcare system as they do today. As such, the provinces and territories have dragged their feet on covering these medically necessary services. Depending on the province, there is limited funding for virtual or nurse practitioner care in very specific circumstances only. This gap has resulted in for-profit corporations charging patients for access to virtual care.
Shoppers, government, and businesses are keeping a close eye on the Canada Post strike. It began early last Friday after failing to reach a new contract with about 55,000 workers represented by the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. The timing of the strike is concerning for many people as the busy Christmas season looms. The federal government recently moved to end labor disputes at ports in BC and Montreal by sending them to binding arbitration. However, federal labor minister Stephen McKinnon has currently ruled out federal intervention to end the strike or bring in an arbitrator. Members from the CUPW in Lethbridge continue to hold a picket line downtown and are continually hopeful a favorable agreement will be reached before any federal intervention.
Definitely, we'd always be preferred to have a negotiated contract. It's always a better option than being legislated back to work and trying to put our rights into question as citizens of this country. At the end of the day, we're here because we've got to be here, unfortunately. We were forced into this position by the corporation, being unwilling to offer us a reasonable contract. So it's unfortunate where we're at.
The union is calling for a cumulative wage hike of 24% over 4 years. The Crown Corporation, meanwhile, has offered an 11.5% increase. Alberta's health minister delivered an update on the province's refocused healthcare system. Adriana LaGrange says Acute Care Alberta will be the new agency responsible for overseeing hospitals. The refocus splits Alberta's healthcare system into 4 health agencies and will oversee the priority sectors of primary care, acute care, continuing care, and mental health and addiction.
So this past July, the Ministry of Mental Health and Addiction stood up Recovery Alberta. And today, Primary Care Alberta becomes a legal entity and officially begins its work under the leadership of CEO Dr. Kim Simmons, who is here today. Soon, these 2 provincial health agencies will be joined by the agency responsible for acute care, which will be known as Acute Care Alberta. Acute care is a significant part of the healthcare system, with complexities that require us to be thoughtful and intentional. So Albertans see tangible improvements to the healthcare delivery.
LaGrange adds the work to create the agency is a bit delayed, but it's expected to be up and running by next spring. Former Humboldt Bronco Ryan Strachnitsky will be the focus of a 6-part television series on AMI next year, focusing on his goal of making the Paralympic basketball team. The 25-year-old from Airdrie was paralyzed from the chest down in 2018 when a semi-trailer ran a stop sign and barreled into the path of the Humboldt Broncos bus in rural Saskatchewan.
It's my show that'll be broadcasted on AMI in May and June, and they're kind of following me around for the next year or so. My basketball career, training, a little bit of hockey here today. So they're kind of following me around and interviewing a lot of people that have helped influence my life and supported me along this journey in hopes that I can make the Paralympics one day. You know, the first year was a learning curve, learning the sport, learning what I can and can't do, but pushing my limits to try and get better. And so I trained a lot over the summer, got to meet a lot of people, and I'm hoping to make the national team in the next couple of years before the next Paralympics.
Lethbridge also lost a player in that horrific crash, and 100% of the proceeds from the Smile Cookie campaign will be donated to support the late Humboldt Bronco Logan Boulet's Green Shirt Day fundraiser and the Logan Boulet Endowment Fund. Steffa Pinn, owner of West Highland Tim Hortons, says last year the campaign raised $9.8 million across Canada. She also tells us how much they hope to collect this year.
The answer is more. The answer is always more, right? So, we've got some great organizations, and bringing awareness to this is so important to us. So I know we've had a ton of pre-orders in. So if you have an organization, you have friends or family, please come to the Tim Hortons locations and pick up those Smile Cookies. All of it will go back to the local community here to raise more awareness, or the Tim Hortons Foundation camps as well. And that also impacts youth in our area as well. The group last year, we sold $43,000 worth of cookies. I can tell you, starting today, we already feel like we're ahead. Normally, this particular location last year did about 500 cookies a day. Our goal is at least 600 cookies per day, just out of this one location alone. The Boulet family, they are so well connected and they know so many people, and certainly that helps not only bring awareness to the Logan Boulet and the Green Shirt Day, but it also brings awareness to the Tim Hortons Foundation camps.
So honored to be part of the Holiday Smile campaign and celebrate the Boulet family. My hometown is Humboldt, Saskatchewan, so I have a special connection to the Boulet family and the community of Humboldt. So to be included and to make cookies for a good cause is just such an honor and such a privilege.
We told Tim Hortons last year we'd do it for 1 year, and it was so successful, they asked us again. We said, sure, we'll do it for 1 more year, that's it. But it's an amazing charitable fundraiser, and we hope that other groups will step up next year and help out, because there's lots to do and lots of fun, and it's Tim Hortons, right? It's an iconic Canadian emblem and coffee.
Well, up next, 'tis the season for snow tires and holiday giving. After the break, we tell you about the Christmas Hope campaign and how to get your car winter ready. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's that time of year. The City of Lethbridge, alongside 6 partner agencies, are kicking off their annual Christmas Hope campaign. The partnership will ensure less fortunate individuals and families throughout the city will have access to food, clothing, and toys to celebrate the holidays without stress. BCN's Landon Hickok has more.
Christmas Hope is entering their 18th holiday season this year, with the demand for donations higher than ever. This year, the City of Lethbridge is partnering with the Interfaith Food Bank, Lethbridge Food Bank, Salvation Army, Lethbridge Family Services Angel Tree, My City Care Shop of Wonders, and Volunteer Lethbridge. Together, the partnership is hoping to provide service to 10,000 people in Lethbridge this year with food, clothing, and toys for children.
The launch at Christmas is really what is going to allow us to not only serve the community now, but it's going to bring in the bulk of the support that we need to identify what we can do in the coming year. And so our Christmas campaign is everything and is expected, hopefully, to bring in the bulk of the cash that we'll need to keep serving our community day to day.
Each organization will share resources with each other, including hampers containing non-perishable food items. On top of donations, all organizations are asking for volunteers wherever and whenever possible.
We rely directly and almost exclusively on donations of toys and money and things like that. So it always is kind of a challenge, and there are a lot of unknowns to say, are we going to have enough resources this year to support the families in need? Are we going to have enough to be able to do Toys for Tots? So there's always some unknowns. That's kind of where we are. We're always looking for donations of toys and money and people and volunteering, and that's kind of the big ticket items that we're looking for.
Additional information, including what items to donate, as well as further updates, will be featured on christmashope.ca. For Bridge City News, I'm Landon Hickok.
Well, the Chinook Regional Hospital Foundation is celebrating the results of Wednesday night's 30th annual Christmas Tree Gala and Auction. The foundation announced $181,500 was raised from 30 auctioned items. Around 3,500 people attended this year's festival. The foundation CEO, Crystal Elliott, thanked all who were part of the event and appreciated their generosity. Well, snow has arrived in Lethbridge, and while it's here, drivers, of course, want to avoid collisions. But is your car ready to drive safely this winter season? BCN's Heidi Echeverria was at Lethbridge Mitsubishi to get some tips for winterizing your vehicle.
Having our cars ready for the arrival of winter is imperative. Changing from all-season tires to winter tires and purchasing proper wipers blades are some of the tasks that must be done to be able to drive safely during the frozen winter month. The service manager with Lethbridge Mitsubishi Motors, Lance Alexandrovich, talks about how we can make our vehicles winter ready.
As the roads get slippery, we want to make sure our braking systems are working. We're making sure that our tires are going to grip the road. We're also wanting to make sure that when we start our vehicle, it is going to actually warm up. It's going to defrost our windows, get the vehicle ready to go, get the vehicle so that it's not going to leave you stranded on the side of the road anywhere. Without having the vehicle ready for the winter, you're going to potentially be stranded in your driveway with a dead battery. There's always the potential your vehicle's not going to be heating up. It's not going to be producing the heat required to actually defrost your windows, keep you warm, keep you safe on the road. Winter tires are a big thing right now with people getting swapped over. Winter tires provide some exceptional benefits over all season and all weather tires to keep you safe on the road. And while we're doing tires, we're also checking your brake fluid, the quality of your brake life, make sure that you're going to be able to stop with your winter tires on the vehicle and not have any problems. Making sure that your windshield washer fluid is rated for -40 and not too diluted with water is very important. That can cause a costly repair in your windshield washer system. Making sure that your fluids are all appropriate and topped up, your block heater is functioning normally, making sure that your heated seats are functioning for comfort, all very, very important in keeping people safe. If you're not comfortable, if you're not able to see, if you're not able to stop, you're going to have a very difficult time on the winter roads here in Lethbridge.
For Bridge City News, I'm Heidi Echevarria.
Thanks, Heidi. Well, 1 in 3 children per Alberta classroom have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, according to new research. It's a neurodevelopmental condition that affects how the brain regulates attention, impulses, and activity levels. But according to the manager of accessibility services with Lethbridge Polytechnic, Mark Davids, screening for ADHD is much better than it used to be. The vegan diet has been growing in popularity for quite some time. And coming up, we learn what a vegan diet actually looks like.